Welcome back to AnglingBuzz Ice. I'm your host Jake Wallace, and here on the Buzz, we love catching big pike. Whether we're catching them with tip-ups or jigging, big pike are awesome to catch through the ice.
Jake, flag!
Oh yeah, we got a flag.
Flag, Jake!
Flag! Feels like a real nice one. Thank you, sir.
Wow!
That's what we're talking about, huh?
Now we're talking.
There we go.
Look at the size of her. Holy cow!
The problem is here in north central Minnesota, a lot of our lakes have stunted pike populations. And while they don't fight as hard as the big ones, small pike are great for pickling. And in this video, we're gonna do pickled pike from start to finish. Now I do wanna mention this recipe calls for a lot of pike, and the best way to find lakes with a lot of pike in them is the onX Fish app. I'm gonna show you real quick here. All you do is open up the app, go to the bottom, click fishing spots, then go to species, click on northern pike, and then high abundance lakes, and then hit done. And what that does is it generates a list of the lakes in your area that have a high population of northern pike. So you can go and look at that list, and what I'll do is I'll choose a lake, and what that is it'll show you the abundance in that lake, it's gonna show you the size range of the fish, and it's a great way to finding a lake that's gonna have a lot of pike in it. Now it's time to pickle some.
You know, pickled fish has been around for a long time. I believe the Scandinavians have been doing it forever, and they brought it over with them to the States years ago. And now it's really popular up here in the Midwest, especially here in Minnesota. You can pickle whatever kind of fish you want. Tullabies, whitefish, herring, suckers, and northern pike are very popular. So pike are a good fish to pickle because they're a firm meat and they're a sweet meat, so they pickle very well. Well, that didn't take long. I literally walked away from it. And that's sort of what we're after. It's a little on the small side, but a pickler. So one thing interesting about up here in Minnesota, we have some unique pike fishing regulations. We have a lot of lakes that have a lot of pike and a lot of stunted northern pike. So there's 3 zones in Minnesota with special pike regs. And where we are in the Brainerd Lakes area, central Minnesota, we're in the north central zone. And what the reg calls for is it's a 22 to 26 inch slot limit on pike. And the idea behind this slot limit is when you get to 22 to 24 inch pike, that's when everybody wants to keep them. So the pike never get a chance to get that big because they always get kept. So the idea is if you have the slot 22 to 26, you have to throw them back. More fish get a chance to get bigger, then you can get bigger fish in the lake. And at the same time, these lakes are full of a lot of stunted pike. So there's a lot of fish like I just caught. So anything under 22 inches, you can keep 10 apiece. So the idea is to encourage harvest of these smaller fish. So the combination of taking a lot of little fish out of the lake and keeping some medium-sized fish in the lake to get bigger should improve the populations of pike. Almost 24.
Wow. All right, well.
See, he doesn't have the beef on him like the other ones do, but he has to go back. What we're trying to do is encourage people to keep pike like that. And if you clean them to pickle them, you don't have to mess around cleaning the Y bones out, so it's easier to clean. So you're just cleaning through a bunch of smaller fish, then you get a big pile of meat that you can use for pickling. So that's what Jake and I are doing today is, we're targeting smaller pike, believe it or not.
So Mike mentioned we're targeting smaller pike for this, and you really don't have to do anything crazy, but you just want to downsize your rig. So I've just got a bullet weight to a barrel swivel, and we're using 20-pound fluoro leaders, right? These pike have really sharp teeth, especially these smaller ones. And then we're just downsizing the hook. So I've just got a number 2 octopus hook here. And the key, if I was targeting bigger pike, I'd use bigger baits. Well, reverse it here. We're targeting smaller pike. I'm gonna go smaller baits. So we're using smaller baits here, and I've got a sucker. He's probably 3.5, maybe 4 inches, but he's just that perfect size for these smaller pike that you want for pickling. And that's all it really is, you know, just take your traditional pike setups and just go a little smaller, but keep the leader the same, and you'll have no issue catching a pile of pickling sized pike. There he is. Down he goes. All right, let's get this set. We're in a deep over here. 14. That's not bad.
Got him. Might be a little bit nicer than we've been getting. Well, about the same.
Nice.
Right in the skinny little pike.
There you go, sir.
All right. The one thing that is interesting about these fish this size, what I have, at least talking to the DNR biologists, have told me, is that there gets to be so many of them in a lake when all the big fish are gone that they start reproducing smaller. So this fish here might only be 2 or 3 years old, but I bet you when we clean some of these, they'll be full of eggs. And according to the biologists, the best fish populations, the fish grow a number of years before they become sexually reproducing. So you want a pike like this to grow 6 or 7 years before it starts producing eggs, so then it gets to be a bigger body. But once it starts producing eggs in its body, all the energy from food goes to the egg production and not to growth, so then they just stay small. So you'll just get a lake full of a whole bunch of these, and they just stay small and they reproduce and they never grow big. So the idea is to get a bunch of them out of the lake so you get nicer pike in the lake. So
This one had been just giving me the business all morning.
one hole the pike are cruising through. And another little pike. We're getting what we came for. Undersized pike, which nobody usually wants, but we're gonna make use of these guys. This lake is like many lakes around here. They're just full of them. Like, you can catch 50 a day, and you think if you killed all those 50, it would make a difference, but it doesn't seem to make a difference in a lot of lakes, so we'll just keep trying anyhow. This ought to top us off. Jake, we got probably over a dozen fish here, so we got a good little batch of pike. All right, we're back off the lake, and we've got our catch a pike out here, and the next step is to clean them. And we're gonna just clean these pike like you'd normally clean any other fish. Take the sides off and remove the rib cages. We're not gonna worry about the Y bones because the Y bones dissolve in the brining solution, which is a good thing, so it eliminates a step with pike. So basically we're gonna clean through all our fish, we're gonna save the meat in a container, we're gonna go back and cut them into the chunks we need for the pickling process. So the first thing we're gonna do is just take the sides off the fish with this electric fillet knife. There's one, and we're gonna flip it over. We're gonna do the other side. Quick and easy. And then we're gonna remove the rib bones. So with the same knife. There we go, that's the last one. We just finished up our batch of fish. We got a nice little bowl of meat here. And before we do anything else, we're gonna weigh this bowl of meat to see how much we have to determine the ratio for the recipe. All right, it looks like we got just a hair less than 4 pounds of meat to work with. So the next step we're gonna do is we're gonna take all these fillets, we're gonna cut them into bite size, like 1 to 1.5 inch chunks. Get them all cut up, put them back in the bowl, go over to the sink and rinse them clean, and then we're gonna put them in a brine. All right, so we've got the fish cut into chunks, we've got them rinsed, and we've got our salt bath or brine ready to go, which is the next part of the recipe. And before I go on, the actual recipe I'm going off of is one I got from a buddy of mine, Bill Schoepke, a fellow angler and industry colleague from Wausau, Wisconsin. And when we were out fishing, he had his mother's recipe from about 50 years ago, and I really liked it, and I thought it would be a good one for us to show. So the next step in this process is to salt the fish. So what I'm gonna do is I've measured 2 cups of salt out of from this measuring cup, and I'm gonna put 2 cups of salt into the water to brine it. I'm gonna mix this up into solution, and then we're gonna add the fish to this solution of salt and water, and we're going to put it in the refrigerator and let it sit for 2 days. All right, so we've got the salt solution mixed up, and we're just gonna add the fish. We've got about 4 pounds of pike here. We're gonna add it to the solution and cover it and let it sit for 2 days before we move on to the next step. All right, so we are gonna cover this up with saran wrap and put it in the fridge for a couple days, and then move on to the next step of the recipe. All right, the next step of this recipe is to remove the fish from the refrigerator, dump the chunks into a colander to drain the salt water out, take the colander, rinse the fish 3 or 4 times to get the salt solution off the fish, put the fish back into a bowl, a dry bowl, and cover the fish chunks with white vinegar. And after the chunks are covered in white vinegar, cover the bowl with cellophane and return back to the refrigerator for 2 more days. And by doing this, what the vinegar is going to do is break down the Y bones that are in the fish chunks, so they will be dissolved out by the time you get to the last stage of the recipe. So our next step is to make the pickling brine. So right now I've got all the ingredients laid out here for the pickling brine for this particular recipe. So what's involved in this brine is we're going to do 1 cup of white vinegar and 1 cup of sugar per pound of meat. So right now we've got 4 pounds of meat for pickling, and I'm going to do 4 cups of sugar, 4 cups of vinegar, 30 cloves, 30 allspices, 10 bay leaves, and we're going to combine this into a kettle and we're going to bring to a boil. So this is our pickling brine. So the idea is to let this solution boil, get all cooked up, and then we're going to let it sit and cool to room temperature. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is slice up these 2 onions, thinly slice them, and we're going to layer them in the bowls with the fish. So we're going to go onions, fish, onions, fish, onions, fish, have them layered out in this bowl. When the brine is done boiling, we're going to let it cool to room temperature. We're going to pour it over the top of these fish, and we're going to let it sit in the fridge for another day. All right, so now we're at the final stage of the pickling process. We've had the fish and the onions soaking in the brine solution for a couple days in the fridge, and now we're simply going to remove the cellophane, and we are going to start putting the fish in the jars. Take this spoon with a drain in it and start scooping the fish and onions and everything that's in here into this jar. And before I get it too full, I'm going to add 1 cinnamon stick to the jar for a little extra flavor. So we're just going to keep filling, putting onions and fish and all the spices into this jar. And then we are going to pack it as tight as we can. And then we're going to take a little ladle here and we're going to top the jar off with the solution so that the whole thing is full of pickling solution, like so. Put the lid on. And there is your pickled fish. So the next final stage now is we're going to let this sit in the refrigerator for another 4 to 5 days before we actually start eating them. All right, we've reached the final stage of our pickling pike journey here. We've left the pickled fish in the jars in the refrigerator for 4 days, and we're ready to give them a try. To get full details on this recipe, see in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the thumbs up button and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future content. And make sure to add all your comments below. We'd love to hear about your favorite fish recipes.